On August 2nd, 1675, the Siege of Brookfield will begin here on what is now Foster Hill Road in West Brookfield. Now, in terms of the dates, keep in mind that the colonists are going by the Julian calendar, but it wasn't until 1752 that they transitioned to the Gregorian calendar, which is used today. And so the adjusted date will be August 12th, 1675. And that's just something to keep in mind during the video. Now, before talking about the Siege of Brookfield, there needs to be a bit of a background here. This is going to be in the middle of King Philip's War, which had just started in late June out in Swansea. And this was going to be led by King Philip, or Metacom, the sachem of the Wampanoags. And so, during the early stages of the war, you had Swansea attacked, you had attacks going on out around Rhode Island. The colonists were trying to gather around Mount Hope in Bristol, Rhode Island, where King Philip and his men had gathered. You're also going to have attacks on places like Dartmouth and eventually Mendon by mid-July. But now the war is going to start to head further west into around central Massachusetts, out in what was Nipmuc country. And so the Massachusetts Bay government is going to hear about the Nipmucs possibly assisting King Philip during the war. And this is Governor John Leverett, you got the Massachusetts Bay General Court. They're actually going to send out a man by the name of Ephraim Curtis to go and speak with the Nipmucs out in Nipmuc country. Now, Ephraim is going to gather with two other men at Marlborough and a native interpreter before heading out here. And so he's going to arrive in Nipmuc country by late July. And so the plan is to relay a message to the Nipmucs that through Governor Leverett, they want to establish peace and the hopes that the Nipmucs will remain neutral during the war and not assist King Philip. So Ephraim and the others are going to arrive in the area. And when doing so, he's going to send out the native interpreter to speak with some of the Nipmucs to try to make contact with their local sachems. And so the interpreter goes and explains to them that through Governor Leverett, they're there to establish peace and seek a peace treaty, but they didn't believe him. So he runs back to Ephraim Curtis and relays a message. Curtis is going to start moving towards these maybe 200 Nipmucs and try to communicate with them. While doing so, it's going to be a bit of a hostile situation. Some of them are going to have their arms drawn and they're going to be arguing and shouting at Ephraim Curtis. But he's going to be persistent in speaking to the sachems. Eventually, cooler heads are going to prevail. He's going to come down from his horse, give in to their demands, and he'll eventually be able to meet with some of the sachems, among them being Metawamp, who as we mentioned later on in the video. So Hutchinson is going to speak with the sachems. He's going to have his interpreter there to assist if they had any questions and to try to answer them to the best of his ability. And at the end of the meeting, he says that if he didn't answer their questions to the best of his ability, or if they have anything else that they want to speak about, they can meet out in Boston and speak with the Massachusetts Bay government. And so these sachems agree to that, and they'll say that they will send out an emissary within 3 days to Boston. And so Ephraim and the others are going to return back and head out from Nipmuc country. But these days pass, no emissaries arrive. And so it's going to be a bit of a concern for Governor Leverett and the Massachusetts Bay government. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to send out Captain Thomas Wheeler and Captain Edward Hutchinson and about 20 other men to Nipmuc country. It's going to be on July 27th. And so the next day, Wheeler and the others are going to begin their march out here, and they're going to have Ephraim Curtis with them as a guide. And on August 1st, they're going to arrive in Brookfield. Now, just a little bit of background about Brookfield. It's a relatively isolated area, far away from the nearest towns, which are Springfield to the west, and they have Marlborough to the east. And it was considered Quabog Plantation. It was established in 1660, so it's been here for about 15 years, again in the heart of Nipmuc country. And so during August 1st, when Wheeler and the others arrive, he's going to send out Ephraim Curtis and a handful of others to again meet with the Nipmucs, again to establish a peace treaty. And so Curtis is going to head with the others to the northwest area, or in the northwest direction from here, around New Braintree and around Minnemesset, which was a Nipmuc village that was surrounded by present-day Hartwick Road and Ware River. And so he's going to speak with some of the sachems again, and they'll say that They'll agree to meet with Captain Wheeler the next day, so August 3rd, at 8 in the morning, 3 miles from the colony. Again, the heart of it was around here. So you had the meeting house, you had the houses, etc. And so Ephraim relays that message to Captain Wheeler, Captain Hutchinson. So now we fast forward to August 2nd, the beginning of the Siege of Brookfield. Captain Wheeler and the others are going to head out to the designated area that the Nipmuc said they would meet. It's going to be around Wicked Bog Lake. However, upon their arrival, there are no Nipmucs in sight. And so Wheeler had about 3 natives with him. 2 of them were brothers, Joshua and Samson Robin. They see this as a bit of a concern and a bit of a red flag, and they're going to try and encourage Wheeler and the others to turn back to the colony. However, some of the Brookfield men that were with Wheeler and Hutchinson, they believe that there's nothing to worry about. They believe that they have a healthy relationship with the Nipmucs and that there won't be any trouble. And they're going to encourage Wheeler and the others to head northwest towards Minamesset up in New Braintree. And so Wheeler and the others are going to continue their journey. It's going to be about 10 miles from here. Now they're going to arrive at an area between Winnemesset Brook and Slane Road in New Braintree. And it was a narrow path, and this is according to Wheeler's account. It was a very narrow path. They had to march single file on horseback, and there was a muddy swamp to their left and a rocky hill to their right. And this is going to be perfect for Meadowwamp and about 200 other Nipmucs who are around the swamp, around the hills, and the plan is to ambush Wheeler and his men. However, they're going to let them kind of pass through where they were laying in wait. This is going to allow them to attack from the rear as well. And so as Wheeler and his men are passing through in single file on that narrow path, Meadowwamp and his men are going to attack them. Now you got 2 markers that highlight Wheeler Surprise. You got one on Ware Road in New Braintree, which is to the west of where the location was for Wheeler Surprise. You also have another marker to the east around Dennis Whitney Road that you can also see, but it is near the area of Slane Road in New Braintree where Wheeler Surprise occurred. And so with Wheeler Surprise, you had 8 men killed, 5 of their horses killed, and an additional 5 men that were wounded. Wheeler also mentions in his account that at least 1 Nipmuc was killed during the ambush. Of the men killed, they were Sergeant John Ayres, who's going to be mentioned later, as well as William Pritchard. Wheeler and Hutchinson themselves are also going to be wounded during the ambush. Wheeler is going to be rescued by his son, Thomas Wheeler Jr. Wheeler Sr. is going to get on the horse of one of the men who was killed, and they're going to head up the hill and head back south towards Brookfield. And they're going to eventually arrive at Foster Hill. And where are they going to gather? Well, it's going to be right here where John Ayres Garrison House stood. Again, Ayres had been killed during the ambush. And so this was a garrison house. They would gather here. They're also going to have all the colonists around the area gather in that house as well that were in Brookfield. And so in total, you're going to have about 80 people stored in this house. Now, there was an archaeological dig done here through Bob Wilder, who was a local historian for West Brookfield, and he really tackled this area and found all these artifacts to really kind of lay out what happened here and where certain sites were, such as Ayres Garrison House or his barn or the meeting house, etc. So, and thanks to him, he helped out a lot with understanding the Siege of Brookfield and Wheeler Surprise, and you can watch his videos online. So again, you have about 80 people gathered here, everybody frantically running into the house, gathering whatever supplies they could. As for the Nipmucs, Meadowwamp and his men, they're going to start to descend upon the house from up the hill where Indian Rock now stands. So they're going to begin shooting on the house. They're going to try and shoot flaming arrows onto the house to set it on fire. And during the day, you have Ephraim Curtis, another man by the name of Henry Young, where he had tried to escape from the house, escape from the Nipmucs, and head east to Boston to notify the government about what's happening and to send reinforcements. However, it's not going to work out. They have to retreat back in the house, and the same thing is going to happen again during the day. They're going to try it a second time, but to no avail. As for Henry Young, he's eventually going to be looking out one of the windows of the garrison house during the day, and while doing so, he's going to be shot and later die of his wounds. You also have another man who's going to be killed, William Pritchard, who had been killed during the ambush or Wheeler's surprise, his son Samuel is going to try and escape from the house and go to his home, which was across the street and neighboring Ayres Garrison House. So you have to imagine Samuel is coming out of the house here, running across the street and trying to get to his home. But according to Wheeler's account, it talks about how Samuel was captured by the Nipmucks and he was killed. He also mentions that they cut off his head, kicked it around like a football, placed it on a pike, and displayed it in front of his family's house. And this is for all the colonists to witness, and it was really going to set the tone for them during the siege. And they're now becoming aware of what's truly happening in the area. And so really that wraps it up for August 2nd. But moving into the early morning hours of August 3rd, Ephraim Curtis is going to make one final attempt to escape to Boston. This time he's going to be successful in getting out there. But during the morning, another group is going to be notified about what's happening here through others. And that's going to be Captain Willard and Sergeant Parker. They hear what's going on in Brookfield, and so they're going to eventually gather a bunch of men and start to head out here, which they won't arrive until August 4th. But you will have reinforcements now starting to head out to Brookfield. Also during the day, you had Judah Trumbull, who was a resident of Brookfield. He was coming back from a trip in Springfield, and upon arriving here, he saw what was happening to Brookfield, and he's going to run back to Springfield and notify Captain John Pynchon, who was the son of William, Springfield's founder. Now, in addition to John Pynchon, he had a gristmill that was built out in Brookfield in 1669. This stood around Wicked Bog Lake. It's actually across Sucker Brook. And so, as the siege is going on, the Nipmucks are actually going to burn down that gristmill. They're also going to burn down the houses within the area. And into August 3rd, they're going to continue to try and set the Garrison House on fire. They're also going to continue to shoot at it. And so while they're shooting and trying to set the house on fire, you have Major Thomas Wilson, who's actually going to try and put out the fire. He's going to run to the well, which stands just over here where there's now a marker. While over there, he's going to be shot in the jaw, but he will survive from his wounds. And again, him being shot and his name is on that marker. And so there's not much else for August 3rd, but going to August 4th, what's going to happen is the Nipmucks are going to start to shelter in Ayres Barn, which stood just north of here, and they're also going to hide out across the street in the meeting house. And so they'll continue to shoot at the Garrison House from these sites. But also during August 4th, they're going to have a cart, and on it they're going to put a bunch of hay and other flammable materials on top of it, set it on fire, and start driving it towards Garrison House. But in Wheeler's account, he's going to mention that it's going to start to rain out and it's going to put out the fire. Wheeler's also going to mention around this time that he was witnessing the Nipmucks moving their dead, so we know they're also suffering casualties as well during this siege. Moving into late August 4th at nighttime, Willard, Parker, and about 46 other men, along with 5 Mohegans, are going to arrive here in Brookfield. Now, the Mohegans are involved because the English had a healthy relationship with the Mohegans through their sachem Uncas, and this goes back to the Pequot War, so about 40 years prior. As they arrive here, 2 of Willard's men are going to be wounded, as well as his horse, but nobody's going to be killed. They're going to gather inside the Garrison House. And so by this point, you have about 130 people hunkered down in here. Now keep in mind, you got Henry Young, who was killed, so his body's in the house. You have 2 women who are going to give birth as well. So you can imagine the conditions inside of there at the time during the middle of August. So reinforcements have finally arrived. Willard and his men are going to continue to shoot and be in battle with the Nipmucks. And then by the morning hours, the Nipmucks are going to eventually begin to retreat, but not before burning down Ayres Barn, which again stood north of the house, and they're going to also burn down the meeting house. And they'll eventually head back towards Minnemesset. There's a marker there along Hartwick Road that mentions that King Philip had encamped there, and it's believed that he rewarded Metawamp and his men with wampum for the attack. As for Captain Edward Hutchinson, he's going to head back out to Marlborough along with Captain Wheeler, and it's there that Hutchinson is going to die from his wounds that he suffered during Wheeler's surprise. It's going to be on August 19th, so a little over 2 weeks later. He's got a gravestone out in Spring Hill Cemetery that you can visit. But in the coming days, you're going to have additional reinforcements from various areas. You're going to have Lieutenant Thomas Cooper coming from Springfield with other men that are going to arrive here. And Cooper's name is going to come up later on during the war. You're also going to have Captain Beers, Captain Lathrop. You're going to have additional Mohegans. And again, with Beers and Lathrop, their names are also going to pop up later during the war. And so, with King Philip's War, it's finally around Central Mass, but now it's going to start moving further west by early September, when the colonies along the Connecticut River are going to begin to be attacked. And during one of those attacks, which was a battle of Bloody Brook out in Deerfield, by mid-September, one Metawamp is going to be in charge of that attack.